Have you ever noticed that the people who call you too sensitive are usually the same people who benefit when you ignore what you feel? You notice a shift in someone's tone. A text suddenly feels colder. A room goes tense before anyone says a word. And somehow, instead of asking why you noticed it, people ask why you care so much. That's the trap. You get labeled as dramatic, emotional, intense, too much. But what if that label is wrong? What if you're not too sensitive at all? What if you're just highly perceptive in a world that rewards disconnection? Because sensitivity is not always emotional fragility. A lot of the time, it's pattern recognition. It's your nervous system remembering. It's your brain connecting details quickly. It's emotional memory, social awareness, and intuition working together in real time. And yes, sometimes it gets tangled up with anxiety. Sometimes it gets loud. Sometimes it gets tired. But that does not make it useless. In fact, one of the biggest lies people hear is this: if it affects you deeply, it must mean you're weak. No. Sometimes it means you notice the truth early. That's the first reframe. You're not always overreacting. Sometimes you're just reacting before everyone else catches up. A lot of highly sensitive people spent years learning how to read the room. Maybe because home felt unpredictable. Maybe because love came with mixed signals. Maybe because being emotionally alert was the safest way to function. So now you pick up on tiny changes fast. You hear the difference between "I'm okay" and "leave me alone." You notice when somebody's words are kind, but their energy is not. You feel tension before tension becomes visible. And then, because you've been taught to doubt yourself, you do something exhausting. You notice the signal immediately, then spend hours trying to explain it away. That's not weakness. That's perception without permission. And once you understand that, your sensitivity starts making a lot more sense. So let's get specific. Here are 5 signs that you may be highly sensitive, not in a cute personality quiz way, but in the real-life, emotionally expensive, weirdly powerful way. Sign 1. You notice tiny changes that other people miss. Not huge, dramatic changes, tiny ones. A pause that lasts half a second too long. A smile that technically looks fine but feels off. A message with all the right words and none of the warmth. You pick up on micro shifts, and sometimes that makes you feel crazy because you can feel the problem before you can prove the problem. You don't need the whole story, you can feel the trailer. Sign 2. You replay interactions in your head, not because you enjoy suffering, not because you're obsessed, because your mind is trying to decode emotional information. What changed? Why did that joke feel sharp? Why did I walk away from that conversation feeling smaller? Why do their words say one thing, but my body says another? Yes, sometimes that turns into overthinking. But sometimes it's your internal pattern detector trying to protect you. Your brain isn't trying to ruin your peace. It's trying to understand the signal. Sign 3. You catch inconsistency fast. When someone says they care but becomes vague when it matters. When someone is warm in private and cold in public. When a workplace says, "We're like family," and your soul quietly whispers, "That sounds like unpaid labor." Sensitive people often notice the gap between presentation and reality. That's not being dramatic. That's tracking congruence. And congruence matters because words can perform. Energy usually doesn't. People can fake politeness. They can fake confidence. They can fake interest. But timing leaks. Defensiveness leaks. avoidance leaks. Your sensitivity often catches the leak before the mask slips. Sign 4. You care deeply, and that makes you absorb a lot. You don't just listen to people, you feel them. You notice the heaviness in a room. You notice what someone wants to say but won't say. You notice the strain behind the smile. That level of care can be beautiful. It can also be exhausting. You can spend 1 hour around chaotic energy and need the rest of the day to recover. That does not mean you're fragile. It means your system takes in more information than average. A sponge is not broken because it absorbs water. It just needs somewhere to release it. And sign 5. You've probably been taught to be ashamed of your sensitivity, so you minimize it. You joke about being crazy. You call yourself dramatic before anyone else can. You ask, "Am I imagining this?" even when your track record says you were right more often than you were wrong. That kind of self-doubt doesn't come from nowhere. It usually comes from being in environments where your perception was inconvenient. Because let's be honest, a person who notices everything is harder to manipulate. That's why sensitivity gets dismissed so often. Not because it's inaccurate, because it's inconvenient. Now here's the bigger reframe. Sensitivity is not just feeling more, it's detecting more. It's an early warning system. It's social intelligence. It's the ability to register subtle patterns before they become obvious consequences. In the wrong environment, that feels like a curse. In the right environment, it becomes a superpower. Think about how useful that is. You can read a room quickly. You can sense when trust is off. You can notice burnout before you collapse. You can tell when someone needs care, when a situation feels unsafe, or when a polished surface is hiding something unstable. That matters in relationships. It matters in leadership. It matters in friendship, parenting, teamwork, creativity, and self-protection. Sensitivity is not the opposite of strength. Untrained sensitivity can feel overwhelming, yes, but trained sensitivity? That's discernment. That's the difference between absorbing everything and understanding what you're absorbing. And this is where a lot of people get stuck. They think the goal is to become less sensitive, less effective, less responsive, less aware. But numbness is not mastery. It's just pain wearing a suit. The real goal is not to shut your sensitivity down. It's to sharpen it, to train it, to pair it with boundaries and self-trust. That's when it becomes power. Power sounds like this. I notice what I notice. I trust myself enough to investigate it. And I respond with clarity instead of shame. That is a completely different life. Instead of saying, "I'm too sensitive," you start saying, "I pick up on patterns quickly." Instead of saying, "Maybe I'm overreacting," you say, "My reaction may be early, but that doesn't mean it's wrong." Instead of asking, "Why am I like this?" you start asking, "How do I use this well?" That question changes everything. Because your sensitivity does need support. It does need boundaries. It does need rest. It does need reality checks sometimes. You do have to learn the difference between intuition and panic. You do have to calm your nervous system enough to hear yourself clearly. You do have to stop treating every feeling like a prophecy. But none of that means your sensitivity is the problem. The problem is shame. The problem is not knowing how to work with your own depth. The problem is living in spaces that punish awareness and reward performance. Your sensitivity probably made your life harder in some ways, but it has also probably protected you more times than you can count. It warned you about people. It caught the mismatch. It slowed you down when something looked good but felt wrong. It helped you love deeply. It helped you understand what other people couldn't say out loud. That is not a defect. That is adaptive intelligence. So no, you are not too sensitive. You are highly aware in a culture that often confuses numbness with strength. And maybe your next level is not becoming harder. Maybe it's becoming clearer. Maybe it's becoming less ashamed of the part of you that notices. Because the part of you that notices is not ruining your life. It may be the part trying to protect it. So the next time someone calls you too sensitive, remember this. Some people say too sensitive when they really mean, you noticed what I hoped you wouldn't. If this gave you language for something you felt your whole life, subscribe to Doodle Dynamics Lab. We turn emotional confusion into self-awareness, and self-awareness into power. And if nobody has told you this lately, let me be direct. Your depth is not the problem. Your awareness is not a burden. And your sensitivity may be one of the smartest things about you.